Welcome to FO Talks. With me is Douglas Hauer. He's one of the leading immigration attorneys in the US. He's an activist. He's also someone who is greatly interested in theology. And today he's spared his valuable time to speak about immigration policy, or rather US immigration policy under Trump 2.0. So without further ado, um, welcome,
Thank you.
Douglas. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Good. We are living in a curious era. The tech bros and the Make America Great Again crowd are going hammer and tongs against each other over H-1B visas. This is a subset of a broader issue, the issue of immigration, which for months was top concern for the American voters, and because of which Donald Trump, or partly because of which Donald Trump won. Now we have a Donald Trump 2.0. So my first question to you is a very, very simple one. What will be Donald Trump's, or to be more precise, his administration's policy objectives when it comes to immigration?
So there are two ways to approach that question. One, we know how the Trump administration operated during Trump 1.0. And the two overarching concerns on the policy side were border security and American jobs. We expect that border security and jobs for Americans are going to remain at the very top of Donald Trump's administration's list. What I would presume is that the Trump administration that's coming in will already have had experience under the first administration with certain policy changes. Some worked, some didn't work. So I think what we're going to see is a more focused administration on immigration, one that is not going to necessarily make the same mistakes they made in 2017 when Trump took office. For example, when Trump took office in 2017, policies at USCIS changed dramatically. USCIS, by the way, is the main agency that approves immigration benefits for people who wish to have visas in the United States.
Could you spell it out for our viewers? Because
Of
that's an
course.
acronym and some of them may not be familiar with it.
Of course. So the name of the agency is United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS. And USCIS is the primary agency in the federal government that processes immigration benefits. And if you wish to sponsor an employee for a green card or a visa, USCIS is the agency that you have to work with for clearing critical approvals to facilitate immigration. When Trump came into power in 2017, there was chaos at USCIS. I think that the Trump administration didn't anticipate the extent to which some of their changes and their reforms at the agency would really obstruct business. I think that the Trump administration coming into office in 2025 is going to some degree have learned from some of those mistakes. So I do think that the continued concern is going to be border security, strict vetting of people who want to enter the United States, but also creating American jobs. That might mean that the Trump administration could possibly influence Congress to pass legislation that might restrict the number of visas, but we just don't know yet.
All right. So you said two things: border security and creating American jobs, correct?
Yes.
So part of the controversy about H-1B, and there have been Americans who've talked about this, is that they say that H-1B visas are far too many. And Senator Grassley also believes that it's a sham exercise. And this whole controversy is, on the one hand, people say Jiminy undercuts American wages, and a lot of the people are not needed anyway. And on the other hand, people say, hang on a minute, we are not producing enough scientists, enough engineers, enough people who know mathematics. That's the uh, Vivek Ramaswamy argument. And we do need these H-1Bs. We do need more immigrants. So where do you think the Trump policy will veer to? On the side of Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, or towards the Make America Great Again, the MAGA crowd?
It's going to be a delicate conversation for the Trump team to have with Ramaswamy and with Musk, because the two people that Trump is going to be relying on to sort of bring about change in the United States in terms of making our government more efficient, those two people are going to be telling the Trump administration, we need more H-1B visas. That makes sense to me. If you look at the business that Elon Musk is in, electric cars, you need sophisticated STEM graduates by the thousands to be in the United States to help facilitate the development of better technology for electric cars. It's that simple. So I think that what we might see is the Trump administration being to some degree influenced by Elon Musk and by Vivek Ramaswamy, to the extent that those two individuals stay on the political scene. One uncertainty is whether or not the two people who might be able to bring about some efficiency into our immigration system, Ramaswamy and Trump, and two people that have a positive view of visas, the two of them, the question is whether or not they're going to be staying in the Trump administration beyond a few months. We don't really yet know what kind of political deal making will go on in the new Congress. But what we can certainly see, what continues to bother Americans, is the constant news stories about crime and immigration, the lack of border security, and now concern about jobs. So there's going to be a delicate conversation, I think, going on in the coming 3 to 6 months at the White House on exactly how to balance these priorities. Republican leadership in Congress does not favor the H-1B visa program.
So that is very interesting to note that the Republicans in Congress do not favor H-1B. Let's go back to where we began. You said that the two objectives are border security and creating American jobs. And immigration reform or immigration policy will follow those two objectives. Now, which of these objectives will prove to be feasible?
So if you look at the last 15 years, Congress has never been able to effectuate real immigration reform. So to get immigration reform on the table in a serious way, Atul, you need two things to happen. You need consensus between the Senate and the House of Representatives, and you need both parties to come together to seriously fix the system. I think that's off the table. It's not going to happen. So where Trump may land is actually focusing in a space where he might make a difference, which is ramping up deportations of people with criminal backgrounds. That's what the Trump platform was during the election. I fully expect that the Trump administration is going to work very hard to increase the deportation numbers and to eliminate the possibility of people with criminal backgrounds from staying in the United States.
So here's a question for you then. If that is what he's going to focus on, does that mean that the Trump administration will give US Customs and Border Protection powers to override civil rights?
I think so. So right now we know that US Customs and Border Protection is the largest law enforcement agency in the country. The agency employs 60,000 people. What is uncertain is the feasibility of a broad-based deportation plan. But that is certainly what the Trump administration is going to fight for. And the question is whether or not there's going to be a sufficient approach to removing people that will actually be feasible. When you remove somebody from the United States under our current legal system, in almost all cases, the person being removed is entitled to a hearing before a judge. We could very well see executive orders issued by the Trump administration stripping people of that due process right. It's very possible. One other change that I think we're going to see is at the southern border. I fully expect the United States, once Trump is back in power, to basically close the southern border to asylum applicants. And again, these are initiatives that are massive. The US-Mexican border is one of the longest borders in the world, and it is one of the borders that is most often crossed unlawfully by people in the world. Whether or not the Trump administration can really effectuate more security at the border, stop the inflow of people who are coming into the United States who are undocumented, or even deport felons or people with serious criminal backgrounds is an open question. What I've seen just in the trenches of being a practitioner in the field of immigration law is that removing somebody involves extensive coordination. You need to actually have funds to buy the plane ticket. You need to organize flights. And by the way, you often need to coordinate removal with foreign governments. So Trump may not find it so simple to coordinate the removal of thousands of people from the United States to Central America and to Latin America, to China or to other countries. So I think that there is a big question mark around whether or not deportation is going to be feasible. On civil rights, I would expect the agency at the border, which again is US Customs and Border Protection, or as we call it in the field of among immigration lawyers, CBP. CBP already operates with very little transparency to the public. The agency subjects even American citizens to regular harassment when those American citizens have traveled to countries such as Israel or Pakistan, Iran, or Russia. CBP operates with very little rule of law, and the agency is going to only be empowered by the Trump administration. So we may see two things happen. We may see tighter border controls, more restrictive policies on asylum, more deportations, but then we might also see the agency that is really charged with securing the border become more powerful. I think that's a dangerous proposition for Americans. As it stands, CBP is simply one of the most flagrant violators of civil rights of any agency in the country. Atul, you're muted. I'm so sorry.
CBP is Customs and Border Protection. And CBP, as you've pointed out, acts with far greater impunity than the Federal Bureau of Investigation. In a private conversation we
Absolutely.
had earlier, you told me that FBI trains its agents better. FBI has greater oversight. FBI has greater accountability, and CBP basically they're poorer training and lesser oversight, and so they act with a bit more impunity or much greater impunity.
I think that's right. Let me give you a concrete example. I recently had a situation with Customs and Border Protection where a client of mine from Iran was barred from entering the United States. Just barred. He was turned back at the airport at Boston Logan Airport, not permitted to come into the United States. And the basis for not permitting him to enter, and by the way, this is under Biden. So let's be really clear that bad behavior with CBP and with immigration is bipartisan. That's a bipartisan affair. It's not like the Republicans own bad behavior with respect to immigration. But let's go back to this example for a second. It illustrates all the points you just made. So CBP returns a scientist from Iran back to Europe. There was no basis for not admitting the individual into the United States. This person had had a visa issued in Europe. He had waited about a year and a half for the visa to be issued. I've seen this dozens of times, by the way, in the last even the last 4 years. When I pushed and probed, I realized, and when I saw the notes that U.S. Customs and Border Protection had made about our client, I realized that the CBP officers who interviewed him were operating with no information about Iran. They had no information or knowledge about Iran. I looked further into the entire situation with my client, which led me to really scrutinize what kind of information, for instance, CBP at Boston Logan Airport is even allowed to have about Iran. And, they don't. The people who have the most information about Iran in the federal government are within the FBI. And the FBI does not share information with US Customs and Border Protection. There were crazy allegations against my client as well. So it just goes to show that the agency, CBP, not only are the officers undertrained, they're less professional, they're more aggressive, and they're operating oftentimes in a vacuum. What they do is go on fishing expeditions. They try to stop people from entering. In the process, they take their cell phones. They try to engage in broad-based questioning in order to just gather information, but they're not really acting, in my opinion, for the safety of the American people. I would give credit to that function to the FBI, it's Federal Bureau of Investigation. And again, CBP, the entry point, the threshold for becoming an officer at the border, inspecting people and even questioning people, is quite low. One other thing I want to mention, because I think all of your viewers need to know it. When you enter the United States, U.S. Customs and Border Protection can ask you for your phone. They can take your phone. If you're coming into the United States on a visa, they can take your phone and they have technology to download the entire phone. So right now, what we're doing is we're preparing clients to be ready for the eventuality that under Trump 2.0, certain classes of people may be subjected to extremely invasive investigations at the border, which includes and is not limited to phone searches. I always tell clients, when you're entering the United States and you have your cell phone, disable the function that allows you to open your phone through face identity, because that allows a customs agent to hold the phone in front of your face and open it. And frankly, I think that if you're a U.S. citizen and you're asked to give your phone over, I've been asked, you just have to say no, and you refuse to do it. If you're coming in onto the United States on a visa, you're not going to have that option. So you need to understand that searches of phones are going to be common, even more so than they were in the last 4 years. And we're going to see the certain classes of people who want to enter the United States being selected out for more scrutiny and, frankly, abuse.
So you've talked a lot about what is likely to happen. Let me take you back to what we've already touched upon, but let's dive a little bit deeper. And that is the big figure of Elon Musk, Mr. America in some ways, so even though he was born in South Africa. And the question I have is, what influence will Elon Musk have on US immigration policy and US immigration bureaucracy? Because it seems he will be heading DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, with Vivek Ramaswamy. So he has views on immigration, strong views, not just when it comes to the US. He's supporting the Alliance for Deutschland in Germany. He's supporting Reform UK in UK. He is now becoming a big player politically, globally. So he has views on immigration, and of course, he has views on how to run things. He's been a successful entrepreneur, and he wants to have a say in reforming bureaucracy. So he'll have a say when it comes to immigration bureaucracy. So what happens in a few days when Trump takes charge and Elon hovers closer to the White House?
Yeah, so let's unpack it for a minute. So Elon Musk is brilliant. You're right. He's an effective business leader. He knows how to trim down organizations. He does it in a brutal way. the United States immigration bureaucracy actually could use an Elon Musk. I think in the best case scenario, Musk stays within the administration for the full 4 years. That there's a question mark behind that because we don't really know how these two egos are going to really operate once Trump is in office. In the best case scenario, what Musk would do is totally take the USCIS and CBP, these two bureaucracies. In the best case scenario, he would take them apart and make them more efficient. I can't think of two agencies that need that, just that reworking and that reorganization more than USCIS and CBP. Let me give you just one example. I'm sure if Musk saw the state of affairs of technology at USCIS, he probably is unaware at this point, or he may not be very aware. I think he'd be surprised. Most applications are still filed by paper. We lag behind other countries that allow similar applications to be filed online through secure portals. So right now, only a fraction of the available immigration applications and benefit requests can be secured through an online application process. So Musk might come in and he might actually be able to effectuate change to make the immigration bureaucracy work better for people who are in that bureaucracy and have to apply through that bureaucracy to stay in the United States. What I think is the biggest point of tension between Musk and Trump and the agencies is that the agencies are probably not going to be welcoming that drive for efficiency. And the Trump administration might very well have the powerful stakeholders in Congress who just are not going to agree to go down that path as well. Congress would need to be intimately involved before there is any major restructuring of agencies at the federal level. Even if Congress isn't going to necessarily need to pass a piece of legislation per se, Congress would be consulted because Congress has expertise with respect to the agencies, how they're funded, and frankly, what their mandates are. And there is a very complicated process involved when an agency is going to be placed under review for some type of extensive retooling. But if Elon Musk can trigger that, if he has the ability to make the agencies more efficient, then that could actually work to everyone's benefit, including those who oppose Trump. But the real question is whether or not the powerful forces that exist in those agencies already, there are entrenched powerful forces within these agencies that they may actually be able to resist all change, and Elon Musk may not have any idea what he's getting into. I think you're on mute again, sorry.
Does that mean that the bureaucracy may largely ignore Elon Musk and carry on as usual?
I fully expect the bureaucracy to ignore Elon Musk. The problem with Musk's position is that nobody really understands it. And it isn't clear that he's going to have the teeth, that he's going to have any ability to enforce anything that he wants to impose. Again, there's going to be this delicate conversation between stakeholders in Congress who are allied with Trump and MAGA, Make America Great Again, and maybe more realistic people like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who are going to say, we need more H-1B visas. We need a more efficient bureaucracy. We need to walk away from what we've been doing the last 30 years on immigration and embrace a new idea, one that's going to actually link immigration to our prosperous economy. I think what all three have in common, that would be Trump, Musk, and Ramaswamy, is that I think they all want the stock market to do well. And for the stock market to do well, American companies have to have workers who can produce what's needed. We can't become stagnant. Unfortunately, the United States lags behind many developed countries in STEM education. We still lag. And there's not an easy fix to that. Until the point where the United States has, until we're on par with other countries in STEM education, we're going to need H-1B visa holders. So I think that that there is going to be a lot of interesting action, but it's not going to be a repeat of 2017. I think that Trump is coming into the immigration conversation with people who are more experienced and who are ready to look at making the system work and be more efficient. And I guess we have to see how that plays out. Oh, you're on mute again. Sorry.
Let's go back to deportations. Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned them. And you've said there are practical problems. You have to pay, you have to coordinate with foreign governments, and all that jazz. So, what do you make of the grand deportation plan? Can it work? Will it work? If not, what happens?
Yeah. So theoretically, let's say that the United States wanted to deport 100,000 people next year, beyond the numbers already being deported. We would need facilities for them to be housed during the deportation process. And again, there needs to be tight coordination with the countries that we're deporting people to. So let's say that the plan is to deport 100,000 criminals next year, in addition to the people already in line to be removed from the United States. That's going to cost the American taxpayers billions of dollars. Let's not make any kind of mistake here in understanding what's involved. It is very expensive to deport people. It's even more expensive to detain them, sometimes for months at a time, while deportation proceedings are completing or while flights are being arranged. So I think that the Trump plan of mass deportations is not really realistic. I think that was a populist play to alleviate concerns of Americans who are genuinely worried about border security. Whether or not Trump is going to be able to effectuate any mass number of deportations is really open to question. And by the way, Trump should be careful what he wishes for here, because if we start deporting millions of people, which I don't think that we can, but if we started deporting millions of people, then I can tell you right now that certain industries are going to be 100% full stop paralyzed. For example, the hotel and resort industry. When you go and you stay Atul at, the Four Seasons in New York or any other hotel, you need clean towels, you need clean sheets. Disproportionately, people who are undocumented are working in facilities for industrial laundry. Disproportionately, we find people without status working in agriculture in the United States, working in restaurants, working in jobs that are absolutely essential for all of our functioning. So going back to, visiting the Four Seasons, can you imagine? We remove people, we have a brutal deportation plan, and all the luxury hotels in New York tell you that they can only change the sheets once a week. That's where we'd be. And that very visible problem
And
is something
Americans wouldn't step up to do those jobs.
No. And that is one issue. Like, it's just that basic. Who's going to change the sheets? Who's going to launder them? If you've got people removed from the United States by the thousands and taken out of critical industries, the United States is going to have an issue. And that's going to affect every aspect of our economy. And that will hit the markets and it will hurt the stock market.
And that'll lead to inflation as well, because the cost of labor will go up dramatically.
Right.
Now, you gave the example of hotels. I'll give you the example of offices. Every office I've ever sat in, whether it is in Washington, Boston, New York, California, wherever, every single one of them has always had cleaners who are taking out the rubbish from south of the border. They can be from Guatemala, El Salvador, you name it, numerous other countries of Central and sometimes even South America. But the reality is, I've never ever met somebody born in the US doing that job.
Right. And so what we may need is for Elon Musk possibly to act as, to really temper Donald Trump, because Elon Musk, I think, has an awareness of the complexity of our economy and the importance of immigration. I think the conversation, it might surprise a lot of liberals, who are very upset with Trump being elected in the first place and who are reading immigration policy as, you know, they're reading the worst case scenarios. The parade of horrors are going to happen. Well, I would suggest that we should take a step back. Let's see if Elon Musk can temper Donald Trump. Because if Elon Musk is able to move the Trump administration and along with the Trump administration, members of Congress who have opposed immigration reform to implementing new laws that give those people status, those individuals who are working very hard, 60, 70, 80 hours a week to support their families, they're the ones that we should be working to make lawful in the United States. And we should be doing everything we can to retain them because they're part of the fabric of our country. You know, you mentioned that I have an interest in theology, and I just want to say something. You know, I'm Jewish, and the Jewish people took great journeys to get to the land of Israel in biblical times. I know personally people that walked from Brazil to the United States. They did a biblical journey to get to the United States. I think that we should be reframing how we think of the conversation of immigration. Right now, it's border security and it's economics. I think we need to reframe it. And Elon Musk might actually play a role in tempering Donald Trump and also in thinking strategically about how to reframe the entire immigration debate. We don't want to be deporting families that are working 60, 70, 80 hours a week from New York, San Francisco, Miami, who are good contributors into the economy. That doesn't do anything for the United States.
Here's something that supporters of immigration reform say. They say that we want people to come here legally, not illegally, because if you have no borders, you have no country. And if people can just break the law and get in here and stay here, then you have no rule of law. What do you say to that?
Look, the concept that somebody who enters the United States unlawfully as a criminal is simply ridiculous. Uh,
Why?
in most cases, well, it's not. In most cases, we're looking at, you know, a civil legal framework around immigration uh, that has to be distinguished from people who engage in criminal conduct. For instance, people who smuggle aliens into the United States, they should be treated as criminals. People who go across the US-Mexican border and who arrive in the United States after a long journey should not be criminalized, especially when, you know, like I mentioned, I know people that walked from Brazil to Texas. Like they took 5 months doing it, crossing horrifically dangerous terrain. I think the United States needs to look at those people as the real new Americans who offer so much to our country. If somebody tells you that they're willing to risk their lives to get here, we need to do something to help them. And I think that Elon Musk might be part of a broader solution for for right now what really isn't a broken immigration system. It's just a broken debate. You know, and the debate likes to polarize very quickly the issues. You know, criminality of crossing the border versus waiting in line. Well, we've got, by some estimates, 12 to 14 million people who are undocumented in the United States. Many of them pay taxes. It's not feasible to deport them. And frankly, like I said, so many functions that we rely on a daily basis are supported and held up. In other words, our lives are actually supported by these people. So I think Elon Musk, ironically, might be able to come in and help reframe the whole conversation.
Let's change the subject a little bit. In the first Trump administration, there was basically a ban on Muslim immigration. A lot of countries were put in a blacklist. In Trump 2.0, should we expect or will there be another ban on Muslim immigration?
So I just spent a few days with a group of very compelling people. Many of them, by the way, devout Muslims, and there's a ton of fear. The fear is twofold. It's a travel ban, but it's also law enforcement scrutiny of Muslim communities in the United States. And I think on the travel ban, one of the very first things that people I know in the immigration law community sort of grasped onto was this idea that as soon as Trump is in office, there's going to be a broad sweeping travel ban. It might be the case, might not be the case. Again, Trump has some of the same players behind him on the immigration side, but those individuals have had a lot of time to work out strategic objectives. So I would expect that there's going to be more scrutiny of people from predominantly Muslim countries where there is an official sanctioning or support of organization or groups that the United States deems to be in the category of terrorist, right? So I would imagine that we'll see some of the same restrictions imposed on Iranians wishing to enter the United States, on Libyans, on people who are coming from Syria, Iraq, Yemen. I don't know, though, that any of us can say for certainty that there'll just be a blanket ban on Muslims. What might be interesting is to see whether or not the Trump administration can resolve some of the leftover issues of Afghanis who worked for the United States government, who served the United States in some fashion, and are still waiting to come to the United States. And in fact, one criticism that Donald Trump made of the Biden administration in the election was that the Biden administration had not done enough for American allies in Afghanistan who are still waiting to come here. So what we might see is the unpredictable. We might actually see Donald Trump as having some good impact on certain parts of our immigration system. An outright Muslim ban is possible, and Trump has support from the Supreme Court of the United States to do it. So it's within his purview. It's part of his executive powers, and he may pull the lever. But again, I think we're also going to be having people like Ramaswamy and Elon Musk on the sidelines, possibly tempering those impulses and redirecting Trump into different focuses.
We're placing a lot of faith in Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy when you've yourself admitted they may not be around for too long.
You have to be an optimist. You have to be an optimist. And look, the best thing that Elon Musk offers is that he's not coming into the government through a political sort of career. He's coming in as a capitalist and as someone who's earned billions of dollars. And he might very well bring a very different approach to fixing our system if he lasts. The one concern I have is that Stephen Miller is going to be running the show, and Stephen Miller might be able to sway Trump to take more onerous steps, like an extreme, astringent, an overbroad Muslim ban. And that is possible, but I guess we have to wait and see.
Jolly good. On that, let's wait and watch a note, and a note of optimism. Let us call it a day. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to having you back.
Thank you, Atul. Have a really great day, and it's great to see you. Be well.
Thank you.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.